Welcome to the debate. Imagine stepping onto a long, upward-moving escalator. You make a conscious choice to take that first step,
Right?
but halfway up you realize it's taking you to the wrong floor. Yet instead of simply turning around and walking down against the steps, you just stand there. You ride it all the way to the top.
Yeah, because reversing course feels incredibly awkward. I mean, you've already committed your body to the upward motion, so you just, surrender to the ride rather than face the friction of turning back.
Exactly. Today on the debate, we're looking at how negotiators weaponize that exact feeling. It's a mental trap called the lowball technique.
Oh, it's a classic.
It really is. We're drawing from the 1978 study by Cialdini, Bassett, Cacioppo, and Miller from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology to figure out what actually makes this trick work. The question is, are we victims of our own stubborn brains, or are we victims of a rigged negotiation table?
Right. It's such a profound question about human agency. And I argue this technique works because it's a deliberate external deception that relies on withholding information to trap the other party.
And I maintain that the power of the lowball comes fundamentally from inside us. It's driven by our profound internal psychological need to stay consistent with our commitments.
Okay, but how does that actually play out in the moment?
Well, to understand why this is so powerful, we have to look past the offer itself and look at the cognitive reflex it triggers. When you say yes to an initial offer, your brain immediately updates your self-identity.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't just a person who agreed to a deal. You are now a committed buyer or a helpful person. Once we mentally commit to something, we want to stay consistent. I mean, our brain just hates backing out.
But you can't separate that psychology from the deliberate context of the deal. The mechanism isn't just spontaneous internal consistency.
Let me just finish the thought, because the core mechanism here is cognitive dissonance. Backing out doesn't just mean breaking a deal. It forces you to process the psychological pain of feeling unreliable or flaky. The internal desire for consistency is what ultimately secures the agreement, even when the conditions worsen.
I hear that, but we still have to view this through the lens of structural manipulation. I mean, we're talking about the dark side of negotiation here. The manipulator is deliberately engineering the sequence of events.
Sure, this sequence matters.
It's everything. They present a super appealing offer specifically to extract a yes, knowing full well they're going to add a cost or change the terms later. The source material explicitly calls this a powerful trick designed to get people hooked before the true cost is revealed. The power lies entirely in the timeline and the deception.
Let's examine that initial yes, though. Take the Cialdini study itself. Researchers asked college students if they would take part in a psychology study.
Right, just a simple request.
Exactly. And when the students agreed, they weren't just nodding along to a transaction. They were establishing a genuine mental anchor. It's like laying the foundation of a house.
Okay.
Once that concrete is poured, the brain feels compelled to build on it, even if the architect suddenly changes the blueprint. They literally adopt the identity of a participant.
I come at it from a different way because I'd push back on calling that a genuine mental anchor. That initial yes is structurally invalid because it's extracted under false pretenses. The manipulator presents an illusion.
But they still agreed to it.
Yeah, but it's not an organic commitment. It's a reaction to a fabricated reality. Think about it like agreeing to help a friend move a few boxes on a Saturday. You say yes, but once you show up, they hand you a piano. Your initial yes wasn't a genuine commitment to moving heavy furniture. It was extracted by deliberately hiding the piano.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. I'll admit, viewing it purely as an informational trap makes the negotiator look terrible, and the hidden piano analogy definitely tracks with how frustrating it feels.
It's incredibly frustrating.
It is, but that fabricated reality completely shatters the moment the manipulator drops the new terms. When the researchers finally told those students that the study was actually at 7 in the morning, the illusion was gone. The piano was revealed. So why didn't they walk away?
Well, because by the time the 7 a.m. detail is revealed, the sequence has already done its damage. I mean, the timeline itself is the weapon here. They ensure the target is already hooked before the flow of information catches up to reality.
But anyone listening to this right now is probably shouting at their steering wheel saying, if they change the time to 7 a.m. on me, I just tell them to forget it.
Right. We all like to think we do that.
We do. But the terrifying thing about Cialdini's data is that we don't do that.
most of those students still showed up. If this were purely an external trick, an informational trap, rational actors would simply walk away the second the terms changed. The trap was sprung, they were totally free to say, 7 a.m., no thanks.
Yeah, they were technically free.
Right, and the fact that they stay, that they wake up at the crack of dawn, proves that the internal drive for consistency violently overrides external logic.
But does framing this merely as a biological quirk, this idea that our brain just hates backing out, does that give the negotiator a free pass? You're describing it almost as if the negotiator just stumbled upon a natural weather phenomenon.
Not a free pass, no, but
The formula of commitment first, cost second is explicitly constructed to exploit that exact pain point. It's a trick. It makes it a structural issue in the negotiation process. Going back to your house analogy, the architect changing the blueprint after the concrete is poured isn't just a passive observer of the homeowner's psychology. They set the trap.
I'm certainly not giving the negotiator a free pass. The application is highly manipulative. But the vulnerability itself, the reason the trap actually snaps shut is strictly psychological.
How so?
Well, the negotiator didn't invent the human brain's desire for consistency. They merely activated it. Even if the architect is setting a trap, it's the homeowner's own obsession with finishing the house, their own need to not feel like a quitter that keeps them paying for those changing blueprints instead of just walking off the lot.
And yet, if the architect had shown the true blueprints from day one, the house never would have been built.
That's a fair point. But when we look at the whole picture, my position remains that the lowball technique is ultimately a testament to the overpowering nature of our internal drive for cognitive consistency. We trap ourselves in our own updated self-identities.
And I maintain that its essence lies in the deliberate, external manipulation of turns. It's the calculated structure of the deal, like the strategic withholding of that 7 a.m. detail, that effectively hooks a negotiating partner.
Well, while we weigh the internal versus the external, there is no denying the raw potency of that commitment first, cost second sequence. The data clearly shows that once an initial agreement is secured, human beings are remarkably vulnerable to accepting worsened conditions.
It's a sobering reality. Understanding this intersection of our own psychology and external negotiation tactics is crucial for navigating everyday agreements. I mean, whether you're buying a car or just agreeing to a meeting, the sequence of how information is presented to you matters immensely.
Absolutely. We encourage everyone listening to examine the foundational commitments in your own lives and look closer at the source material to better understand the hidden architecture of influence.
It's definitely worth a closer read.
The next time you find yourself riding an escalator to a floor you never intended to visit, ask yourself, are you still stepping forward because you want to, or just to avoid the psychological pain of turning around?